Are you looking for a fish that's a little bit on the rare side, has amazing camouflage, and needs a little bit of extra TLC? Then you might be looking for the anchor catfish. And in this video, we're going to teach you everything you need to know about them to find out if you should have them in your aquarium. Hey guys, welcome back to MattKeepsFish. Today we are talking about the anchor catfish or the Asian stone catfish. I've had them for about 7 months now in a 20-gallon aquarium, and I've been waiting to do this care guide, but I held it off so that I could learn as much as I can, and now we're ready. Although they're often said to be the world's smallest catfish, they're actually not. That title goes to Corydoras pygmaeus, which is another popular fish we'll look at later. These guys will still be very small though, maxing out around an inch long. And this is about the size you'll pick them up at. At this point, all their cool colors, patterns, and designs are clearly visible. The most prominent color on their body being brown, a bunch of different shades of it, and that's to help them camouflage. The only parts of them that aren't brown are their gills. Even their eyes match the rest of the natural patterning of their bodies. And that's really important because fish that are used to being preyed on will make their eyes look like it's part of the rest of a leaf. They'll make it indistinguishable. If you want to see our Bolivian ram video, which will be right here, Bolivian rams have a line that goes straight through the eye so that it doesn't look like an eye. Another thing that's cool about the eyes of this catfish is that they reflect at night, kind of like a cat's does. They're not the only fish to do this either. If you look at the African brown knifefish care guide, they do it too. And that's going to become really important as we go into this care guide. As we continue to look at the fish, we follow that pattern. There's some textures there, there's some plates that we can see. It's when we get to the fins of the fish that it gets even more interesting because they're designed to look like rotting leaves. There's points of translucence followed by points of coloration. It's kind of splotched to make it look like a leaf that's breaking apart and there's holes in it. As we return to the face past those tiny little eyes, we'll see the whiskers around this tiny but gaping mouth, and then we draw our attention to the pectoral fins, which gives the anchor catfish its name. As I'm sure you saw in the thumbnail, the anchor catfish kind of forms an anchor shape, which is really cool. These pectoral fins close against the body when they're trying to wiggle their way through moss or between stones, and then they open themselves when they're trying to lodge themselves somewhere, and if they're being swallowed by a fish so that the fish takes a lot of damage. If you look closely, you'll notice that there's tiny little barbs poking out of these pectoral fins, and that is to increase the amount of damage to any fish that's interested in eating it, and to help it hold on to things all the better. Sexing the anchor catfish is going to be similar to a lot of fish in that it's not very clear which sex your anchor catfish is going to be until it's fully mature. And even then you're going to need two to compare because the only difference is size. I'm sure you can also tell by vent shape like you would for a goldfish, but I'm not comfortable with that and I'm sure it would cause a lot of stress on the fish. The behavior of the anchor catfish falls under one word, and that is shy. It is very rare to see these fish during the day when all the lights are on, and even if you do, it's only because they haven't hidden themselves well enough. Even in the presence of ditherfish, they will continue to hide all day. Even in the presence of multiples from their own species, they will continue to hide all day, and they won't even hide together like coolie loaches will. They'll pack in tight together. These guys, they like to kind of spread out and pick their own spots. So to ask and answer the question of, are they a schooling fish? I'm going to say not. Okay, how do you care for the anchor catfish? First, we're going to look at the water quality, and like I've said in every care guide, the water quality generally doesn't matter as long as your toxins are low. So ammonia is low, nitrite is low, nitrate is only high enough to support the plants. The pH really doesn't matter, the hardness really doesn't matter as long as if you're taking them from like a really soft water store, bring them home to your really hard well water, you're adjusting them, it really doesn't matter. The key thing for this and any fish is stability. So if you are adding anything that changes the pH or hardness of your water, make sure that you do it very gradually. Or even better yet, do it before the fish ever gets in there. The temperature needs of this fish are very interesting. It can actually go pretty cool water. I'm going to post a care guide as to how cool, but generally people will have them in unheated setups. This makes them great for river-style aquariums where you have hillstream loaches and white cloud minnows because that's where they naturally would be found. As for how big that setup has to be, it doesn't have to be that big. I've seen it successfully kept in like 5 gallons, 3 gallons. I probably wouldn't go smaller than that, but you probably could. And I'm basing that off of how much waste are they producing? Not that much. How much space are they occupying? How big are they? Not that big. And how active are they? Not that active. Of course, if you can go bigger, but they are really great for nanotanks. And that is because a lot of the other fish that you want to keep with them are going to be nanofish. Although I've kept them successfully in my 20-gallon planted aquarium, I still think that the best aquarium I've ever seen them in was the one that I have linked below. It's kind of a swamp style. It's hard to see in there, but there's a lot of live food, there's a lot of cover, really makes them feel comfortable. It's just not my style of aquarium to look at. Back on the train of tank mates, what would I keep them with? Lots of nano fish. So ember tetras I've kept them with, celestial pearl danios I've kept them with, cherry shrimp, assassin snails, honey gourami, I've kept them with all of them. I'm sure there's a much wider selection of fish that you can keep them with, but there is one thing that you have to keep in mind that we're going to get into in just a second. I don't usually talk about breeding fish, but in this case I will, just because I've heard of how to breed it, and that is through keeping them with floating plants. So like I said, swamp style is the best for them. They're going to feel the most comfortable there. So give them lots of floating plants and you might just have some baby anchor catfish. Okay, so here's the reason why you have to be a little bit careful with what other fish you put with them. And that reason is feeding. The reason that these fish need a little extra tender love and care is because they are very picky eaters. And to make matters worse, they are very slow to get their food. When I first got them and I was under the impression that they were basically a mini banjo catfish, I fed them pellets. So it was recommended in the comments that I start feeding frozen or live food. I wasn't quite ready for live food, but frozen food I started feeding, and I've noticed that their stomachs have become more distended and they've come out every time I put it in. So now I feed them once every 2 or 3 days frozen bloodworms. I'm sure it could also work with any kind of small shrimp. It could also work with live worms or live shrimp, as I've unfortunately found out. And if I was going to go full swamp with this aquarium, I would put lots of live nano shrimps in there, as well as blackworms. But these are all foods that lots of other fish enjoy. And so if you feed during the day, it's all gonna get picked up before the anchor catfish ever feel comfortable enough to come out and get it. So how do you fix this problem? How do you get them fed? And the answer is you have to feed them at night. This means that the aquarium light is off, the room light is off, and it is just as dark as possible. If you don't do this, the anchor catfish are not gonna come out, they're gonna continue to go hungry, and all the other animals in the aquarium are gonna eat up the food. But once you do make it perfectly dark, these fish are gonna come out quickly. More and more so as you make this a regular feeding. My new favorite thing is to turn all the lights off, put in some bloodworms, and they don't need that much, and then come back later with my flashlight and see them all out, just gobbling on the bloodworms. Although typically when you turn that flashlight on, they freeze on the spot, they stop eating, they stop moving. You do get to see their reflective eyes, and you get to know for sure that they're eating. This brings us to the next section, and a new section for my care guide series, hardiness. How hardy are they? Essentially, I had starved my catfish for about 3 months before I started regularly feeding frozen food. And since they are such excellent scavengers with the use of those barbels, they were able to track down new sources of food throughout the aquarium. Unfortunately, that happened to be my cherry shrimp and my assassin snail babies. Although I've never actually seen them eat those two invertebrates, and you never will see them, I would notice that my cherry shrimp population would continue to go down, and the assassin snails, despite laying tons of eggs, there was never a baby to be found. Although that experience has proven that they are very, very hardy, you never want to push them to that point. Make sure that, like me, you're feeding them at least every 2 or 3 days on a food that you know they're going to accept. Apart from their dietary hardiness, they're also very hardy in temperature. As we discussed, you can keep them warm, you can keep them cold. You can keep them high flow, you can keep them low flow. They really don't care. So should you keep an anchor catfish in your aquarium? Well, there's only one really big reason why you wouldn't. It's the only reason that they're not hardy, and that is the competition. If you want this fish well fed, you can't have anything else feeding at night. Now, if you have a couple snails, a couple shrimp, you don't have to worry about that kind of competition. But if you have a Pictus catfish in the same aquarium, this anchor catfish is getting nothing. And any fish can only go for so long without food. Apart from that, there are some other things that might deter you. For instance, they will eat microorganisms, baby shrimp, baby snails, and others I'm sure. You are gonna have to add nightly feeds to your feeding schedule. And if this aquarium is in a public area, it's gonna be kinda hard to have everyone else agree to turn the lights off at a certain time. Another big thing is you're not gonna see this thing that often. And if you're used to having all your fish come up to greet you and at least be present when you're in the room, you're not gonna get that from this fish. Even if the fish happen to be somewhat out in the open while you're sitting in the same room, it's not going to be moving, and you're probably not going to see it with how good the camouflage is. But if you're okay with meticulously feeding it every few nights, there isn't any outstanding nocturnal competition, and if you would love to have a fish that likes to play hide and seek with you, then I think that you should absolutely get some anchor catfish in your aquarium. So what are your experiences with anchor catfish? Was there anything that I missed? Leave it in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, leave it a like. If you want to see more like this and updates on these aquariums, subscribe, and I will see you guys on a Sunday. So that you know, oh man. Are you looking for a fish? Yes, they are. And in this video, we're going to teach you everything you need to know about them, so we know, so that you know we know. Video, we're going to teach you everything you need to know. Dang it, we'll cut that.